Today, we're talking to Jessica Zemple, who is a life coach at Life Shucker and a former cancer caregiver. We're talking about how to reconnect with your purpose after the caregiving journey.
Jessica Zemple, and I am actually a life coach. So when my caregiving journey started with my former partner, I thought I had all the tools I needed just because this is what I do every day, all day is help people with self care and self love. And boy, did I have a lot to learn. My former partner, he was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. And his treatment was pretty intense, but it was very curable. While it was stage 4, his diagnosis and prognosis was really good. It was just a matter of getting through the barbaric treatment, and he did, and he's healthy and strong today, which I'm so grateful for. But I definitely learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a scary diagnosis to get. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. It was that phone call or, that moment is sort of scary and overwhelming.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, I'm glad he is well now, in your caregiving experience for you, what was most challenging, and also what was most rewarding as a caregiver?
I had no idea what I was getting into. I am a pretty high achieving person. I've been very independent and always taken care of people in my life. I'm a natural caregiver, and I had never really been exposed to caregiving and the intensity of this journey. Had a lot of surprises. Within the first week or two, I think I lost 5 pounds just because I was forgetting to eat because I was trying to research the best paths for his care and his treatment. And I do have a tendency of overachieving. What I realized was whatever your patterns are in your normal life, your real life, carry right on into caregiving. So, of course, I had to research every possible thing. I interviewed and found the best doctors and what I thought were the best care plans. And of course, it was all his choice, but I wanted to arm him with the best information that we could find for his plan and for what was going on. So I didn't eat that first week or two and realized quickly I was like, this is not going to work really well. I got to make sure I'm in balance. And yeah, wow. There was just so many unknowns in the beginning. And I think for us, that was harder than once we did get the actual diagnosis and the treatment plan was decided on. But that time in between where you don't know where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing, and or even when we first learned of the cancer, we didn't know how far it had spread. And so really trying to stay in that center in the present moment was a continual practice. Different for me because it wasn't in my body, but also this is my partner, the person I loved. And so I had my own journey with that, trying to just stay with the information we knew at the time, not to overreact, not to um yeah, go further than we needed to and worry about things that we weren't at yet. I know that through life I've realized that as I move forward, I get more resources. So I always come back to the present moment too and say, okay, what do I need to solve today? What do I need to handle in this moment? Because tomorrow I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to have more information. I'm going to have new ideas. And so I find going out into the future is actually not very helpful because I have less resources today than I will in the future moment. So staying present was really important in the beginning, And yeah, and then we got the treatment plan, and we were really blessed. We live in San Diego, and some of the best doctors for that particular cancer are here. And we had a 30-minute drive to one of the best cancer centers. Uh, and as you know from your own caregiving journey, there's so many variables, and some people have to travel for care. So we were so grateful to have the ability to stay at home and go through the treatment while, just 30 minutes away. And I should give it was UCSD. They were incredible. Their team is incredible. We really loved them because they were holistic in their care. So not only did we have all the doctors that were appropriate for helping diagnose and treat his cancer, but we also had a spiritual team. We had a social worker. We had the palliative care team. Like, they gave us everything we needed for him. And I will never take anything away from the person that's going through the journey. But what I realized as I moved through it, I was like, wait a minute, I need a care team too. so so I pulled together my own little team of angels, which included my mom and my stepdad and one of my best friends. Her name's Alia. And yeah, the 3 of them were really my strength and how I got through it, because I realized I needed to be strong in order to show up for him and support him on his healing journey. So many layers, so many complications, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I'm grateful that I had that privilege really to walk through somebody's health journey is so intimate and so private, and it's really a special experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. He was obviously lucky to have you as his caregiver, and I'm glad you had the, wisdom to pull together your own care team because that's a really, hard piece of the puzzle. Even, the story you shared about losing 5 pounds in that first week, like having support for you is, part of your own self-care. Um, we like to talk on this podcast about sort of the financial picture of caregiving and what that looked like. I have a couple questions, but maybe you can just start sort of at large with how were you guys, funding his care and what did that look like by way of out-of-pocket expenses, insurance, et cetera?
Yeah, we were really blessed in that regard. Really incredible insurance. In fact, our insurance team, the Wood brothers, Brian and Ben Wood, they were instrumental in helping us find answers and really move through the system too, because there's all these little um, paths that you're supposed to follow, which push out scans and stuff like that. So one thing I would love to share with the anybody listening is we found that if we paid cash for some of the scans, we actually could move the dates up faster. So we got answers faster. And then back we worked backwards in getting reimbursed for those. So it wasn't necessarily totally out of pocket, because I know not many people in the world could do that. But what that did for us is it eliminated that waiting period and helped us get answers faster, and that was our insurance team that helped us with that plan. So we were very lucky to have good insurance and insurance brokers that cared for us, that were like family. And then fortunately, with his career, he still got his salary, so we didn't have to worry about that. Now, myself, I run my own business and I'm a coach, so I get paid for the hours I work. And so for me, I was personally impacted tremendously. And that was a very conscious choice. I knew that whatever form I was choosing to be the caregiver with was coming from choice. And Even I find even when we think we don't have choices, and in a lot of cases we don't, we didn't have a choice whether we were gonna deal with the cancer or not, but you always have a choice of how you look at it and how you relate to what's going on. So I was very mindful to make conscious choices about being the caregiver and what that was gonna look like and putting my business on hold. So I realized fast that I couldn't do both really well. And so at that point, he was my top priority, and I had enough in savings, and we shared some expenses. We were living together, and so some of that stuff was covered because of him and his salary and income and everything. So I wasn't like put out on the street or anything, but I did put my business on hold, and that had a tremendous impact on me personally. So I started living off of my savings, and fortunately I'm a saver, so I had a bucket to dig from. I also could have asked for help. I'm just not very good at asking for help from anybody, so that's my own opportunity, let's say. And what I didn't realize was the longer term effect that would have on my business. So what happened was he got a healthy prognosis right as COVID came into the world. And so my business had pretty much shut down for about 9 months. And then we hit COVID. And for my business to thrive, it's really helpful to be interacting and meeting people because I'm working with people. And so it took me a long time to build my momentum back up. And also, what I didn't realize was I needed to heal after the caregiving journey. I put too much in. I think I he would have been just fine had I given 50% of what I did, but that wasn't on him, that was on me. And so I found that once we got through everything, I needed to rest. And so it took that time for me to heal and then to build my practice back up. And fortunately, it's back flowing and I'm having fun again. And but it really took, I would say, it was probably a good 2 years of impact to my business. And yeah, sometimes that stings a little bit. But I also know that I made those choices and I wouldn't go back and change anything, even knowing what I know today.
Yeah, I can see and hear the overachiever in you. You know, you said you probably could have given 50, but that's not our way as overachievers. I guess I want to jump around a little bit because I know you mentioned to me offline that your relationship was, a little bit on the rocks before he was diagnosed, but you chose to stay and care for him. I think that was a decision you guys made together.
Mhm.
But you did part ways once he was healthy. Can you talk just a little bit about like that decision making, what that transition was like afterwards? Was obviously you needed time to rest and heal from this. There was a financial component based on everything you just said. Can you just sort of talk about these decisions?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. So before he got diagnosed, there were a couple things that we were working through. And when the diagnosis came, it was really some thoughtful conversations about what's best for him, what's best for me too. I tend to put other people's needs over my own, and I've been working on that for years. But at this point, I had I had enough awareness to know that my health, my wellness mattered as well with this choice. And what I came to was that I wouldn't be able to look in the mirror at myself knowing I walked away from somebody who needed my love and support. And that's ultimately why I made the choice to stay. We had had such a loving relationship and I loved him dearly. So there was a lot of um foundation already there. And so it really came to thinking about the future and how I would feel. And I considered what the judgments of people would be because they wouldn't have known the details. And I'm sure there would have been some people saying, "What an awful person for walking away." But they don't know. And so for anybody that does choose to walk away and not be the caregiver, I support that choice too. And not everybody's cut out to be a caregiver, and none of us know all the details that somebody's going through. So my invitation is that we just don't judge anybody, and that yeah, that we respect people's choices and get curious and use that as a connection point more than a division. And there's so many different ways caregiving can look too. It doesn't have to be all in. And both my former partner and I were overachievers. And so together we were, I got quite the match in this journey. And we could have asked for more help. He was very sensitive, and we were afraid that more people would add more possibilities of him getting sick. And so we did choose to keep the circle pretty tight, and even that was judged by people outside thinking I was controlling it and, keeping people away from him, and I had to be his voice because he was focused on healing, and he actually didn't have a voice literally because it was his throat. Um, and so I was trying to represent what he wanted, and it was interesting what came at me in that space. But everybody is going through their own journeys, because what I did learn is the fear. Everybody handles fear in a different way, and I thought it would bring out the best in people, but what it does is it just brings out the reality. I think it magnifies what's already there, and so if somebody's operating from a fear-based mentality, that is only amplified in an experience like this. So we went through the journey, and it was quite beautiful. We got so close, and we were hopeful that some of the things would be resolved in the journey. We thought it would bring everything back together, and it didn't. And so at the end, we decided to part ways, and that was hard for me because I had gotten so close to him, and facing death with somebody is nothing I've ever gone through before. And yeah, so when we did part ways, it was pretty hard on me. I needed some time after that to find my footing again, and also to find my purpose again, which was surprising because as a life coach, every day I'm helping people live the life of their dreams and go through really hard things. And it's really a meaningful career, and I've always been fulfilled by it. However, going that deep with somebody on their healing journey was unlike anything I'd ever been through. So it took me time to really find myself again in my work. And that was unexpected because I thought, oh, great, I'll just go back to coaching and that's fulfilling. And what it's done is it's deepened my coaching. It's also given me the motivation to take bigger risks in some of my work. And so there's been some beautiful results from the journey as well. So does that answer what you were
Yeah,
asking?
100%. Thank you for sharing so openly about, this experience. I can only imagine how hard all of these sort of compounding things, must have been, or complicated, I guess I should say. But, you started to talk about it a little bit. Can you talk about how you, reconnected with your purpose as you, rested and then picked up business again, and outside of that, there's purpose outside of business. How did you actually go about finding that and reconnecting with that?
Yes. One, it was time and space and grace. So really knowing that I needed to give myself grace. And in some ways, my first purpose was healing myself. And so giving myself that permission because of losing out on income for so long, I felt an urgency to build my business back up and, start serving because also that fills my heart. So that was the first thing is realizing that taking care of me was good enough and important and that in itself had purpose and meaning. And so I did that. And then, I did buy myself a camper van, because I was so heartbroken with everything that was going on, and I was like, "What's one thing that's gonna feed my soul?" Um, so I did that for myself, and so that gave me a really positive distraction to plan and, start thinking about all those trips, and so that was one thing I did for myself. And then with my coaching, what I have found is I was always pretty bold in my coaching, but I found a new level of being bold and just calling BS on things because it's almost like I didn't have time to hear the stories and like the excuses and everything. So I would just cut right in, and I still do. And which is great because then I can help the people open up in new ways. And of course, I don't wanna try to wound anybody, and I do it in what I feel is the right time for them, but I also have, like, just really been more direct, and I don't know if that's a result of just realizing time is limited or yeah, just realizing what actually matters more so than other things. If I'm hearing somebody complain about, um, you know, something that's more superficial, I'm like, let's get to the real heart of it. And I found, that the right people come in that are ready for that. So, and then the other thing that I've started is a documentary with my dad, and he is diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so it's created a really complicated journey in that I've had a little bit of grit in my life, and it's been beautiful. So we started filming that in September of 2022, and what I'm doing is going to be bringing that around and opening up conversations about mental health and really helping to reduce the stigmas and the shame and the guilt around mental health. So it's been fun to dig deeper and use that journey as a platform to serve more people. And as we're doing here talking to caregivers, so now I'm so passionate about caregivers because I had no idea, and I feel like I can help if even if just one person. So I've been working with the YMCA and some of their caregiver communities, and it's been just beautiful to reconnect and find more purpose. Thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, I mean, you just said so many things that could probably be their own podcast. I'm very excited about this documentary that you're working on with your dad. My mom's mom was diagnosed schizophrenic also,
Mm.
and so mental health has been important to me and my family as well. You mentioned that, you've experienced some grit in your life, with a couple things we've talked about, and I'm sure many other things that we haven't. And I know this is something that's important to you, at Life Shucker, your business, and how grit can help people learn and grow. Can you elaborate on this a little bit? Like, what does grit do for us?
Yeah. Well, I acknowledge you for your journey and your family's journey. And we're going to have many more conversations. Um, so for me, I feel like we teach what's important to us and we find purpose in our lives for what's meaningful for us. So, for example, if if somebody didn't have a voice as a child, maybe they're a advocate for children now in their world. And so for me, part of my journey was dealing with all this grit. So I lived in secrecy and in shame for so many years. And one of my best friends, his name's Brian, in our, gosh, early 40s, which is right where I am now. So this was only a couple of years ago. We've been friends since we were 10. And he was learning new things about what I had gone through as a child and was surprised. He had no idea the extent of the trauma and the violence, and that was because I didn't share. And there was no way for him to know because I didn't let him into my life because I was afraid of being judged. I was also afraid that I may, end up with the schizophrenia as well. I now have very different feelings about that. I don't see schizophrenia as negative as I did as a child. I Through my journey, I actually see the beauty of it, and that's, I think, what's so important in the work I'm doing with my dad is to help people understand that my dad is my dad, and the schizophrenia is just something he's experiencing, and it doesn't define him, or me. And so it took me a long time to actually let people see me. And so I use the metaphor as I was kind of living in my shell because I was afraid. And what that did though is it really isolated me from the world. And even though I was surrounded by all these magnificent people, I was never connected to them. And I was so lonely. So I think about my days. I used to live in Chicago and there was 8 million people there, and I had never been lonelier in my life than when I was there because I didn't allow people to see me and acknowledge me and connect with me. And I don't want anybody else to feel that way. And so that's why I do the work that I do is I really look at these times in my life that have been gritty, whether it was the journey with schizophrenia or caregiving. And I see how it's made me stronger, more resilient, fearless in a lot of ways. It's added some fears in different ways, um, but that's just human nature and part of life. But I now see that those challenges have just added such beauty and richness to my life, and so that's why my metaphor with coaching and really with life is that it's our grit that creates our pearl, and that all of us are really these beautiful pearls, all shapes and sizes, and, yeah, and then we've got these shells around us that we close in times of fear, which is totally okay and appropriate at times. But if you live in your shell, it's dark, it's constraining, it's confining, it's isolating, and you gotta shuck it open with love. And so that's what I'm trying to do is help people shuck their shells open with love. And if I can shuck up few people along the way, it just makes the world better and brighter. So that's really it. So I guess it's a kind of a personal mission so I don't feel guilt and shame, and I'm hoping that others feel more open to sharing their journeys, and then that can reduce judgments and um separation, because all of that just leads to such damaging effects on us. And so that's really it, trying to help people connect with each other, with themselves, and shine.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you've taken, a piece of your personal story and turned it into are able to put that through Life Shucker and help other people understand this also or find this also. Um, I want to bring us back to caregiving a little bit. You
Yeah.
obviously do a lot of work around self-care. I know that's important to you. Can you talk a little bit about how someone finds time for themselves when they feel already like their time is constrained, just trying to, meet the needs of their loved one that they're caring for?
Absolutely. So, first one is ask for help. There's so much help out there and people want to help, they just don't know how. I imagine you felt this way too. Every caregiver I've talked to is, somebody who says, Let me know what I can do to help." And it's too broad. And sometimes we don't know what we need. So, for those of you that are supporting caregivers, just do something. Go and do their laundry, cut their grass, order them some food, whatever it is. And then for the caregiver, you get to ask for what you need. So for me, my parents would come into town and I would just go be outside and go for a walk and just be surrounded with them. And so that's number 1 is there's so much help out there and people want to help. You just got to let them do it. The other thing was for me realizing I didn't need to be an overachiever with caregiving. And so finding a little bit more balance. And for me, what that looked like was literally allowing myself to go to the coffee shop in the morning and get a chai tea. And that was my joy. So I called them the coffee run cries. I would literally drive to the coffee shop, which was like just a few minutes away, and I would just bawl my eyes out because of the intensity and watching the pain and the suffering was just heartbreaking. And so I would just allow myself to cry, get my chai tea, call my mom, who is my best friend, and she would just give me a little boost of support, and then I would start my day. And I that was really helpful. It was only 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 on a really slow drive, but that was enough to reconnect. I also think grounding is really important. So if you can go outside and put literally your feet on the ground, take in some of that energy from Mother Earth and let Mother Earth support you as you're supporting the caregiver. That is absolutely critical. And then it just took creativity. I would um y- when he was in the radiation, I would walk around the hospital and just get a little movement for myself. It wasn't anything like my normal activity, but it was something. And then the other thing I did for self care was I actually wrote a book while I was caregiving because I needed something that didn't have a time um, urgency, a timeline, or a sensitivity. So I could like work on the book for 2 minutes and then, take a break for a week or 2. And that was really helpful because it gave me something that wasn't the cancer and the healing to talk about. Um, so that was also just something. So is there a little thing you can do for yourself? And maybe it's knitting or painting or um listening to a podcast. I wasn't able to listen to podcasts because part of his was about he needed to breathe and I needed to make sure he was um okay. But I think in a lot of places you can just listen to a book or listen to a podcast that's going to inspire you. Take a nap when they're napping is also a good one. But again, if I could go back, I would just ask for a lot more help because there's so much out there.
Yeah, I mean, that can be hard. I love what you just said about self-care and some of the examples you gave really bring it back to like the basics of self-care, like connecting with people you care about, getting rest, getting movement, nourishing yourself. I think sometimes we can overcomplicate self-care, but everything you just mentioned really brings it back to the basics.
Yeah.
Um, we like to wrap up these conversations with, the same kind of question to people that have been caregivers. What do you know now, or what did you know at the end of your caregiving journey that you wish you knew at the beginning?
One thing that I was surprised about was how complicated the ending was. And what I mean by that is the day we learned that he was cancer free was not a straightforward joy. It was, there were like, I'm going to even cry now. Like, there were people getting diagnosed that day that weren't going to have the same outcome. And there were people that had been on that journey for 7 years and they weren't gonna have the same outcome. And that shared grief, um, was really hard for me because I felt guilty that we had made it and that we tackled it and we won. He won, and I just was the supporting mechanism, um, but that was surprising and really hard for me to handle because I had so much compassion and empathy for all the people that I had shared the time in the lobby with, and or the people that didn't have the good doctors that we had, or the resources, the family support, the insurance or whatever. So it was complicated. It wasn't just our journey, it was a shared journey. Um and then also what was interesting too is we had such rigid structure through the treatment, and we had the care team, looking after us, and once they said that we're good, like, it was like, "Wait," a little surprising of like, "What do you mean? Like, I have to plan my Monday now?" Like, this is what my Monday was. It was meds at this time, a lymphatic massage at this time, meds again here, trying to get him to drink water here, like, and it was almost lonely again because we had this team that loved us and cared so much for us that when they weren't there on that Monday, it was shocking. So there's so many different things that I wish I would have known, and also kind of the ignorance was bliss as well. It's like, in some ways it was great. I had no idea what I was getting into because I don't know if I would have signed up for all that, but I would have because this he's such an incredible person, and it's something we'll get to share for the rest of our lives. But yeah, that complication was surprising. I thought it would just be pure joy knowing he was healthy, and I thought it was just going to be relief, and it wasn't. It wasn't that simple. So that's what I would offer somebody who's in the middle of it, or even if you're at the end of it and maybe you haven't touched on why it's so weird, or strange. Just, knowing that it's a shared journey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I had the same experience, but I do sort of understand the confusion where it should be relief, but there's this feeling of like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? Or at least that was my experience. Um, I guess my follow-up question to what you've just shared, is there anything you could have done or wish you had done or known to have prepared for that? Or, you just said ignorance is bliss. Maybe that's just part of the experience, but looking back, could you or would you have prepared differently for that experience of the end?
Yeah, I don't know if I could have changed that. Um, and in some ways, that's the beautiful part of, being human is having that compassion and that empathy and gratitude, so much gratitude. But yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I don't think there's enough people that could have told me to expect that would have prepared me for that, until I went through it. So, yeah, beautiful
Yeah.
question, though. I'll have to reflect more on that.
Yeah. Yeah, report back. Thank you so much for sharing, I mean, so much of your former partner's story and your dad's story. I think this has been very helpful, and um, you keep coming back to choice. That's obviously a value of yours. You come back to grit, and I think these are all really useful things for other caregivers to hear. If people want to find you and follow along your story or your work online, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm, at my website is lifeshucker.com, um, and you can find me on YouTube, Jessica Zemple, and Instagram and, Facebook. It's all Life Shucker and Jessica Zemple. Fortunately, there's no other Shuckers in the world, and there's no other Jessica Zemple, so I'm super easy to find, and you can just email me. I love hearing from people, and if I can support you in any way, whether it's just cheering you on or giving you a resource or maybe even some time, I am happy to do that. So, please don't be afraid to ask for help. And yeah, I want to support other people. So let me know how I can.